Yes. And we are live. And once again, I am super thrilled to host the wonderful Shelli R. Johannes. This
Hello.
time I know that it's Johannes, and not
Yes.
Johannes. You promised to ask your parents.
I mean, they say it's Johannes.
Okay, if they say that it's Johannes, then they know. And I remember the R stands for Renee.
Yes, it does.
Okay, you shouldn't tell me these things because then I go ahead and divulge them.
Yes, in fact, I don't think many people know that.
Well, now lots of people do. But
Yeah, breaking news.
That's not going to stop you from sharing this, is it?
No.
Okay, great. So, hello everybody. I'm Mel Rosenberg for the Children's Literature channel of the New Books Network, and I have the great honor of hosting the multi-author, multi-talented, multi-wonderful person, Shelli Johannes, and we are here to celebrate your new book, She Persisted, Florence Nightingale, which is incredible. You're going to tell us all about that from the series that involves Chelsea Clinton. And even though you've had a wonderful mega career, this is a huge feather in your cap. So welcome, Shelli. Tell us about the book. Tell us about what happened. And then I'm going to ask you some questions because we talked 7 months ago and you brought up some really interesting things that we should be discussing. Yeah.
Now wonder what I said.
Don't worry, I'll tell you.
Okay. And then I'll deny.
It's on tape.
Florence Nightingale came about. It actually was interesting because I had read an article that and my editor at the time, Jill Santopolo, who was the editor over THEO THESAURUS, had been interviewed and was talking about how they were moving Chelsea Clinton's picture book series into a chapter book series. So I had emailed my agent at the time, I have a new agent since then, and had said, hey, I've worked with Jill. Is she taking names? I would be very interested in doing this. And she said, the series usually leans towards bigger authors, like Andrea Pickney, Meg Medina. And she said, but I'll see if I can throw your name in the hat. So they threw my name in the hat, and literally, she was like, stay tuned. And then 6 weeks later, we get an email that is, we're thinking about doing Florence Nightingale for to celebrate International Nurses Day. And would Shelli be interested because she's been writing STEM books and we feel like it would be a good fit. So that was how it got started. I just asked to throw my name in the hat and it got thrown in.
You're a persister.
I am. She persisted. That is me.
Yeah. And I think that you're not a small name anymore, dear.
Really?
Yeah. First of all, you're back on my show. That must mean something to somebody.
Yes. I'm a second visitor.
Secondly, we talked last time about your 2 THEO THESAURUS books, which I love, the picture books, and your CECE Loves Science, which you have now, I don't know, 9 or 10 books out already and more coming.
We have 8 out. We have 8. This is the last one that came out. 8 out, and right now 1 more coming, but we're hoping that there'll be more. Yeah,
and your 4 or 5 books, of which you sold 250,000 copies online.
Self-published. Yeah, those are my self-published books.
Which made you a self-published millionaire. And,
no.
and how many people can say that?
Well, thank you.
And you're kind and generous and funny. So enough accolades.
Yes.
So what is the book? What's in the book? Why is the book special?
Yeah, I think Florence Nightingale is special because she was one of the first pioneers in nursing. And it was at a time in the 1800s where it was very male dominated. Male doctors and nurses were actually looked upon as really lower class citizens. What I love about Florence is that she came from a very wealthy family who wanted to marry her off and brought her to the biggest parties and, taught her how to sew. And she learned like 5 languages. Girls were not going through education at the time. So her father educated her at home. but she just had a calling that she wanted to be a nurse, and her family was very against it. So they had a very kind of, I guess, tough relationship, because she was constantly wanting to be a nurse, and they were constantly wanting her to not be a nurse because at the time they were looked down upon. And she just, she secretly went to hospitals when she was traveling to talk with nuns and at churches, and to talk with people about nursing behind her parents' backs. And not that I'm, promoting going against your parents. However, I think it was just, a testament to her and just how much she really felt like she needed to go into this field. In that process, she met someone, Sydney, and he was the Secretary of War. And she really impressed him. And he ended up giving her a position in the Crimean War. And she went there and was looked down upon. The doctors wouldn't speak to her. The soldiers really wouldn't speak to her at first, but she saw how bad the environment was and started making small changes that we use today. So she's responsible for the nurse call bell. She's responsible for sanitation, and really changed the healthcare system for Britain, because she brought that death toll from 40% down to 2% within 6 months. So the things that she put in place there, eventually got back to the Queen, and she became a really prominent figure in transforming the healthcare system across Great Britain.
So, yes, a remarkable woman. Two things struck me, and I read your book, and then I read a little bit more about Florence Nightingale, because I come from the healthcare community, and I should have known more. So did she ever get married?
She did not.
Exactly. So this is one of the interesting things that I'm thinking that this was also one of her, the same way that some people pursue a calling because they don't want to have a family life. And
Right.
she saw something that was for her much greater.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that really interested me was the comparison that I made between Florence Nightingale and Ignaz Semmelweis, who taught similar things. But he, when we talk about hygiene and we talk about reforming hospitals and sanitation, we always talk about Florence. And part of it was because I think she was such a charming individual.
She was a hard nose too. I mean, she was, really persistent. And even when she went into the hospitals with all the male doctors, I mean, it just didn't phase her. Like, she had been so used to meeting people throughout her life through her parents and going to adult parties, and that she was able to kind of, work her way through that system. And so she was a tough bird. I mean, she lived to be about 90. She did catch the Crimean fever when she was over in Crimea. And once she came back and had gotten the Merit of Honor from Great Britain and some other awards, and really helped reform. I mean, she really was bedridden for the last 30 years of her life.
But do you think that she was a charming person?
I'm sure she had to be very charismatic to get through.
That's my guess,
Yeah.
especially what she had to go through in her life, and also being a woman and really being chronically ill and overcoming all of these things. Whereas Semmelweis probably was not that charming of an individual by accounts, and he had a hard time because he wasn't nice, perhaps.
Right.
The other thing that I'm reading into this is that she must have been a great storyteller.
Yeah. I mean, she wrote thousands of letters. I mean, she documented everything. I think 13,000 letters from the time she was very, very young all the way until the end of her life. So she would write letters to the Queen, write letters to Parliament, write letters to government officials, trying to get supplies sent to the war, and really try and not just about the war, but really creating a training center for nurses so that women could be upheld in society as nurses, that they were, not seen as lower class citizens, and got the proper training. So I'm sure that, she had to have a level of charisma, and probably did and learned that through her, her being around her parents. I mean, I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and perhaps her very high level upbringing,
Right.
as you know, an aristocratic British family. So I'm always thinking that if you're a good storyteller, then life comes easier for you.
Yes.
Human beings are storytellers, and if you're good at that, then you can succeed in many areas. So, do you want to read any a few lines from the book, Shelley?
Sure.
Show us anything.
Yeah, I can
It's
read.
a wonderful book.
Thank you. What I really love about this Persisted series is that you really, get a chance to see Florence when she was younger, and kind of what she was excited about, and how that led to her really being a female hero. And there were many, many nurses, that Clara Barton, Mary Siebold, I mean, that had really made a difference in nursing. But for Great Britain, it was Florence Nightingale. But just the fact that it really tells kids that, you don't have to look at a hero and think it's a hero. A hero starts out as a regular person, just like all of us, and they follow their passion, and it leads to heroism in whatever way that it does. And so I love this series because you really get to experience Florence as a child, and you can kind of see what her path was and how it led her towards, I guess, her calling. So I'll read the first chapter. So it was a girl who loved math. Florence Nightingale never wanted to be a proper lady. While some girls enjoyed sewing, Florence loved math. But that was just the beginning. Florence became a pioneer in nursing and one of the most famous nurses of all. She developed many of the hygiene procedures we use today, such as washing hands, wearing masks, and keeping hospitals clean. But for all she would do in her life, Florence's road to becoming a nurse wasn't easy. Florence Nightingale was born in Florence, Italy on May 12, 1820. Her sister was only a year old at the time. Their English parents were on a 3-year honeymoon around Europe when the girls were born. Because the Nightingales loved Italy so much, they named the girls after Italian cities. Florence and Pop, which is what Florence called her, lived a very privileged life. Her father, William, was a wealthy banker and politician, and Frances, her mother, was a true socialite. Frances loved throwing fancy parties and inviting those she considered to be the brightest minds of the time. They also had many visits from family and friends. No matter who showed up, Frances encouraged her daughter to mingle. The Nightingales lived in 2 different houses throughout the year. The houses were so big they even had their own names. In the winter, the Nightingales lived in their estate at Embley Park, located south of London. The mansion had many bedrooms and sat on 5 square miles of beautiful countryside. And in the summer, the family moved north to their country home, Lea Hurst. Florence loved her time at Lea Hurst. Her house sat at the beautiful edge of a village overlooking rolling hills and sloping meadows, and she enjoyed wandering through the gardens and reading. What I want to get to is, when Florence was young, most girls were not allowed to attend school or receive an education, but Florence's father knew his daughters were smart, so he educated them at home. As she grew older, her education stopped. Her life became filled with social events and parties, but she wasn't happy with this lifestyle, later writing, "Why have women passion, intellect, and moral activity, these 3 together, and a place in society where none of the 3 can be exercised?" Her relationship with her mother wasn't easy, and the same was true for her relationship with her sister. Flo wondered how she could be in the same family yet be so different. Pop loved the life of a Victorian woman and spent her time with Fanny in the drawing room, polishing silverware and setting a proper table. Even though Florence wanted her mother's approval, she knew that life was not for her. Flo wanted something more. So I skipped around a little bit, but it gives you a little taste of, kind of the privileged life that she had, but that something was always missing. And this is when she's, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like this is, so a lot of kids that I read, this to are 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, same age. And, maybe they're finding a way, something that they love, that they don't really see as a career or something that they can make a difference in.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that you're passionate about is empowering girls.
Yes.
To be scientists, to be innovative, and that's wonderful. Now, I want to segue to a couple of very interesting things you said 7 months ago in our last
Okay.
interviews. I want to remind you,
Okay.
and that is, as a writer, that you should also write to the market. After I keep telling people, hold on, write to your passion, write to your passion, write to your heart, write from your heart, write about the things you believe in. And then comes very hyper successful you and says, part of my success is because I'm a marketing person. I have a master's in marketing, and I'm always have in my mind what the market is looking for. So how do we overcome this apparent dichotomy? And then I'm going to tell you something interesting.
I mean, I think that I don't think they're separate. I think you can, I don't go out in the market and go, oh, somebody's looking for a book in, washing dishes. I'm going to write a book about washing dishes. You know what I'm saying? But I always look at the market, and I really try to see publishing as a business, because I think as writers, there's like two hats, right? We have the writing side, and then there's the business side. And I really try to keep those two things separate. So when I'm writing, I'm just writing from my heart, something that I love. For example, Florence Nightingale, that's kind of one of those things, like writing to the market. I saw the article, saw something in it that I felt like touched my heart. It wasn't just something because I thought I could make money. I really believe in the series. I believe in teaching young girls to follow their dreams. And I love that women have always done that, and that we are showcasing that. So that was me kind of putting my name in the hat. And that was something that, it was an article that was in the market of what was coming up. So that's kind of what I mean by you can write to the market. I don't think you can write to the market and not love what you're doing. I think some people do that. They'll go out there and look, oh, the Titan submarine is so hot right now, I'm going to write a thriller about, sea exploring, like I don't think, but they don't love what they're doing. They're just creating that because they're trying to make money and they're trying to kind of get published. I don't think that works, because I think the intention behind what you're writing and just that energy behind it that you put out is what's going to bring something back. Does that make sense? So
Sure.
I think they can be balanced. I don't want people to think that I'm saying write to the market. I think we have to be smart about what we write, and but we have to love what we write.
Okay. So before we had this interview 7 months ago, I thought that, and I taught that writing for the market is not a good idea, because it doesn't bring out your creativity. And the moment you say, oh, well, because I'm Jewish, I can write stories about Hanukkah, and I can, send them to Jewish publishers. So what can I write about a latke, if you know what a latke is?
I don't actually.
It's like it's a pancake. It's
Oh,
exactly a
okay.
pancake with potatoes,
Right. Okay.
which Jewish people call a latke.
Got it.
So, the latke that wanted to be a car racer, I don't know what. The book might get published, but it's always going to be, when you read it, you'll say, oh, this is somebody who wrote to the market. And then after your interview, it happened to me. I hope in a good way, because I resolved not to write stuff on Jewish topics, because that for me is writing to my market, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after our conversation, I had an idea, and I wrote a manuscript on a Jewish topic, and it's not bad. So maybe you are right after all. In other words, maybe you do have to have both hats. But when I look at your books, which I'm most in love with, which are the THEO THESAURUS ones, these were ones from the heart. These were ones that grew out of your son using big words.
Yes.
If I remember. It wasn't like the world needs more books on big words, was
Right.
it?
No, not at all. It was just a something he said that, you get that feeling. Someone says something, or you see something, and it just goes, you go, huh? Like it's that extra little thought that you put towards it.
So maybe we should have the market somewhere in the back of our heads. Find something really cool to write about, and then if there is a market, I don't know, continue with the drafts? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for example, like our Love Science, when I came up with that idea, my daughter said one day, science was for boys when I was trying to get her to go into a science camp. And I kind of thought, wow, like, how did she get to that? Because, we are a science family. And then I kind of went out and said, are we writing science books for girls? So I kind of go out, look at the market. And at the time, people are talking about STEM for women. It's a big topic that's, in the news, you're hearing about it. And so I thought, what if I took a Fancy Nancy and wrote a Fancy Nancy for science? So that was me kind of looking at the market, this was before Andrea Beatty's Ada Twist series that was probably just, getting ready to hit as far as Rosie Revere. So, but other than that, she was really the only one at the time that we started writing. This was like 2013, I think was the first time that we really thought about it. And we sold it in 2015. It came out 2018. So, that's what I mean by writing to the market. But it was something that I loved. I wouldn't go out and find, something that I didn't love. But I definitely looked to see what were some comps, how were they doing? Had this been done? How could I do it differently? That's kind of what I mean by looking at the market instead of just sitting down and writing a book. Like I kind of thought through, where would this fit in the market?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I mean. But I do think a lot of self-published authors find a topic that's hot. Like I said, for example, Titan right now with the Sea Explorer. I know someone's out there probably writing some kind of adult sea explorer thriller underseas, because that's a hot topic and they can get it out really quickly. They can write it and do that process and have it out in probably by Christmas, and it would still be newsworthy and kind of focus on the topics that we've been discussing about ocean exploring. So that's kind of what I mean. But I don't think you can write something without passion and a love for it. I don't think it'll come out flat on the page, I think.
Mm-hmm. There's another thing, agents want authors who are market savvy. They will often ask you, right? How do you think we should market the book? And I always say to myself, why should I, as an author, worry about that? That's not my job. My job is to write a creative story. And maybe in today's world, it isn't anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of know the business side of publishing, and at least I don't think you have to think about that while you're writing. Like I try to say, write with your creative mind. Don't worry about the market while you're writing, right? Like, because that's just going to mess your head up. But once you write and you feel like you have a good story, kind of look at the market and then kind of flip over to the business side and think about, where does this fit? How can I push this?
So write creatively and then tweak.
I just think it's you can't write while you're thinking about the business of writing, because you'll get in your head and you'll be like, oh my God.
That's what I'm saying. But we just said that you have to think about the business.
You do. I think, like, before I get started, I try to think about where do I want this to go. But while I'm sitting down and having that moment of just love and creativity, I don't want to stop and go, is the market going to like this? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this what I should be writing? Like, I don't want to think about that while I'm writing it. So I've already gone through the thought process before
it's like eating a cream cake and knowing it's bad for you and eating it anyway. So you write from the heart, but somewhere in your head there's a little bird telling you, remember, somebody has to buy the book.
Right.
So which is a perfect segue to self-publishing. Because people like me who look at writing for children as a calling rather than as a business say it's perfectly all right to self-publish a wonderful book, especially if it doesn't have a market. There's a lot of topics and books that don't have markets.
Yeah, I love self-publishing. I'm totally behind self-publishing if it's done the right way.
Okay, so a few words about the right way, because I was in favor of self-publishing and then I was against it. And we have a website with over 250,000 self-published ebooks. So I should be in favor. And then I went back to looking at my own writing career, and I followed the traditional path. And then I met you. See if we can clarify a few things.
Okay.
You start.
Okay. I don't know, where was there a question? For self-publishing, I think
Do you want the question?
no, I got it. I think it's a valuable and it's a good path. It is one path to publishing. I think when I was self-publishing, there was a big stigma around it. I mean, I had a really hard time with my community, with organizations I belonged to, and was kind of looked down upon. And the series that I did had gone through, like, we tried to sell it traditionally, but what was coming back was, we don't think teen girls like the outdoors. Like, that was kind of why it wasn't selling. And mine was a wilderness thriller. So, but I know that there are people that like that.
Again, it's a marketing thing. It's being turned away, not
Right.
because your manuscript isn't wonderful. It's because, oh, I'm not sure we can sell it.
Right. So it had been vetted, like it had gone through agents. I had an agent at the time. And so I just decided to put it out myself. I thought it would be fun, and I felt like the story needed to be out there. So, I made sure I did it the right way. I had it edited. I went through the process. I think self-publishing, we have to look at it as a quick path to publishing, but it's not a shortcut to writing. I don't know if that makes sense, but so it doesn't, the quality of writing should not be compromised in my mind. Some people who are just chunking out books, and they're not editing them, and they're not thinking about, the jacket copy, or they're not thinking about the cover, and they're just throwing it out there. I think those are the indie authors who are kind of giving it a bad rap. You know what I'm saying? They're spelling errors. They don't get it copy edited. I mean, just those kinds of things. So I think if you do it the right way, self-publishing is a valid path. And I love it. I have a book I'm working on now. I'm going to self-publish again. So, and I actually just recovered that series, and I'm just getting ready to put those new covers up just to see if I can kind of reinvent the series. So I think it's a fun thing to dabble with, especially if you find that you write fast and you write a lot. And one thing with my agent, I always say is, is this something I can self-publish, or is this something that you want? So that's kind of me thinking about the market. Like, I'm writing this. Is this something that you would like to sell? If not, then I'd love to self-publish it. And, my agent doesn't care, as long as I let her know, and I'm obviously not in any kind of competitive clause. I'm not going against any competitive clause.
Yeah, but Shelli, again, you are a spectacular lady. You have a master's degree in marketing.
Yes.
And people like me who self-publish are either going to give the books away so that people will read them, or sell them for $1 and have maybe 50 or 100 people read them. And because my genre is particularly picture books, I see a lot of novices spending fortunes. This includes me. I have a garage full of books that I didn't sell. So you hire an illustrator, either a wonderful one or a less wonderful one, and you think you're going to sell thousands of books, and you make a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
And you end up really with losing $10,000 or $20,000, and sometimes an inferior product.
Yeah, that's not the ideal way of self-publishing, is it?
No, but how did you overcome not giving yourself the shortcut treatment? Saying, okay, I can write and I know this is good, but I still need a copy editor. I still need a content editor. I still need a jacket editor.
Yeah, I mean, it was a series I had worked on for so long that I wanted it out, and I didn't really put it out thinking, oh, how much money am I going to make? I really put it out in, I want this book out there, and if it's out there and my name is on it, I want it to be the best book that it can be.
But you sold 250,000 copies. How did you do that? That's incredible. It
ebooks.
doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm just saying. I just want to clarify. It was not paperbacks. It was ebooks.
Ebooks are also copies. PDFs are copies.
Yes, ebooks. About 250,000 ebooks of the series.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, one, I think it came out at a time in September in 2011 that the self-publishing was just starting. So I think that was one of the things. So, and because I had a photographer that did the cover, I think it stood out against the self-publishing books that were being done at the time. I'm not sure that would happen now. I don't know. We'll see, because I'm going to put, some other books out. But I do think that I spent time up front and I spent the money up front, but I didn't waste money. Like I wasn't gonna, I wanted to do it smart. So I think if you are self-publishing, I think the best way to do it is to do it right and to start with ebooks. We all like to have the paperbacks, but the paperbacks aren't selling. So we don't want to keep paperbacks like stocked in our house and not have those. And then we're just handing them out and we're spending the money on them. Ebooks are not, once you put them up, there's not really an effort or a monetary effort assigned to them. So I think most of those copies, like 95% of those copies, were ebooks. So I think most people who are self-publishing indie probably sell more ebooks than paperback. So I would say start there. So you're not spending all the money on the paperback, because that's the one that really sucks you dry, right?
Especially if it's a picture book and it's hardcover.
Picture book is that's a tough one to self-publish because of the illustration side of it.
No, but because why I rail against people who go this route without knowing all the dangers.
Yeah.
Because I've fallen prey to everything out there. Vanity presses and
Right.
You name it. But I think that the biggest problem is being able to accept critiques and editing, and not to argue with the editor. Hey, I'm paying for this. This is my book. I don't need you. I know better than you do. Chapter 4 is stained.
Right. Well, that happens in traditional and self-publishing, right? I mean, any editor, you're going to get feedback. I mean, I go through more edits, with my traditional stuff than I do with my self-publishing stuff, because it's the agent, multiple edits there, critique partner, multiple edits there, editor, multiple edits there.
Yeah, but if you're working with the top editor from Philomel, as you often have, you're going to bow to their wisdom very often.
Right.
Whereas if you're hiring somebody, at least from my point of view, sometimes you'll say, well, I like this chapter, and it's my chapter, it's my book. Have
Yeah,
a nice
you have
day.
to make those decisions, but I would say that's why it's better to spend money on an editor that you trust, as opposed to the cheapest editor, because the cheapest editor, you're just going to let it go. But if it's someone,
But I mean, in order to trust an editor, you have to be willing, even though you're paying for everything,
right,
to say, okay, I don't agree, and it's my book and I'm paying, but I'm still going to, to defer to your judgment.
Yeah, that's where your gut check, I think, comes in.
Yeah. So you have to have a certain amount of belief in yourself, and persistence, but also to believe that you can also be better.
Yeah.
And I think the traditional publishing forces us to become better and better. That's my opinion.
Yes.
But my last question for you today, because I also want to interview you next year when more books come out, because it's so much fun, is Shelli, you've really hit a stand-up home run in this field. You've published young adult and middle grade and picture books, and now with your wonderful new book, She Persisted, Florence Nightingale. You have tons of experience, and you're young, and you have the success with independent self-publishing. I think that you should have your own publishing house. What do you think?
I think that would be way too much time to be taking away from my writing. I think I would have been a good agent in another life. I think I would have been a good agent that, could have helped balance those two. But one of my friends, colleagues, Zibby Owens, is a podcaster, and she just started her own publishing company, and they're doing, I think, a book a month, and she's doing an amazing job. The work that goes into it, I don't think I could do that level of work for other people's books. I struggle to do that level of work for my own, right? So my passion is writing. I just want to write. I think I like to write across different genres. I think if a whim catches me and it's a chapter book, I write it. I don't really think about, should I be selling picture books? I just go with my heart. And I think that's where the gut check comes in with editing. That's where the gut check comes in with your ideas, like what sticks with you, like what you kind of have to just know that feeling in your gut. So when I get edits back, I'll be able to say, I always ask the question, am I going to die? One of my friends does this, Kim Derting. She always says, are we going to die on this hill? Like if my editor comes back and says, change this, and this. Am I going to die on this hill? Not a big change. Okay. Am I going to die on this hill? No. Am I going to die on this hill? I need to think about this one, because your immediate response is no, right? Because you don't want to do the work. So I try to think about what are the things that I'm getting that kind of reaction to and why, and then do I need to change it or do I not? So I don't think you have to change everything. But I think we have to trust the people who are editing us. And if we don't trust them, we shouldn't be working with them. But there's a lot of things that come back in editing that it's not a hill you're going to die on, right? Like you kind of get that feeling like, no. But then you really have to kind of step back and be like, wait, this isn't big. This is small. I can do this. This is good. And then kind of wait for those nuggets. Then you can go back to your editor and say, I've done all these, but these two things I'm concerned about. Here's why. I've thought through the process. I've taken in your comments, and here's why I don't think I should do them. Can we discuss? So I think trying to resist that urge, because I think we all get it. The minute we get feedback, it's like, because we don't want to work anymore. We want to get the book out. We want to move on to the next thing. It really comes down to, do we want to do the work?
But it's also a matter of ego, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think I am someone who I've grown up in a very critical family. So I'm used to criticism. It doesn't bother me. It just kind of makes me try to figure out, like, how can I get past this? I always want to be better in my craft. So if there's something that I can learn, I think that's great. And I don't know, it doesn't bother me on the level that I think some people are bothered by. That's kind of my business hat is, okay, this is a business. And if they think this book should be, I wrote a thriller and it's not out yet, but I wrote a thriller and my agent had come back and said, I love the premise. I love the concept. I love your voice, but these two characters, there's a problem with them. And I'm not excited about your setting. I think you should take this thriller and set it in Georgia where you live. And it would be much more interesting as kind of a Southern thriller. And I was like, what? I mean, that's huge, right? That's a whole different setting. That's my entire book. But she's right. Like from a market perspective, the setting that I had chosen in a boarding school, in Washington, D.C., like has been done. So there's not really a place for it if I want it to come out. And so, I'm trying to rewrite it as a Southern book. So, I mean, and that's a big change. So I think you just have to step back and think about it and make that decision for yourself.
Absolutely. And so I'm just going to mention Harold Underdown, whom we both love.
Yes.
And people don't realize how important editors are, not only for the changes that they make, but the changes they don't make.
Right.
Harold and
I would love to work for Harold I think he's at Astra now. I would love, because he's such a good editor. Such a good editor. I've used him a couple of times.
What you can submit to him. He has.
Oh yeah.
And I would urge you to do that. I wanted to mention that sometimes editors do the greatest thing of all when they say to you, something is missing in your story.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, well, what do you mean? This is my 142nd version of this, right?
Right.
And they say, yeah, but there's something, the ending doesn't seem to be over. And you say, what?
Yeah.
But if you're able after a day or two to say, hmm. So the best editing work that I've had on my manuscripts is not when the editors, they cross things out or whatever,
Right.
nor when they tell you that this should be in Ontario and not in Israel,
Mm-hmm.
but when they say, Mel, I think something is missing here.
Right. Those are hard comments too, because you don't know what to do with them.
Those are the ones I love.
Yeah.
I mean, no. Those are the ones I hate.
You hate them, but you love them.
Hate. No, but hate, and then you figure out what's missing,
Yeah.
and then you love.
And then you go, so my first published book, Untraceable, it didn't sell. And I will say, embarrassingly enough, now when I look back at the original version, it was very based on, I don't want to, it was right September 11th. So the concept was very based on terrorist cells and where they were hiding. I had them hiding in the wilderness. It didn't sell because I think a lot of people were like, I don't think girls are interested in the wilderness and, terrorist cells in the woods, which sounds bad when I say it now, but at the time I thought it was brilliant. Because they were finding different cells in different places at that time. And I had one editor that I hired after it didn't sell, and she came back and said, it's the terrorist cell thing. Like, you've got to think of another way. And so I researched and thought of poaching, and it kind of led me down a completely different path. I was willing to do that. If I had been like, no, I'm doing terrorist cells, this is how it started. But if people are saying, we're just not feeling this, it doesn't feel like it's grounded, we're not sure this is a topic for teens, then, if enough people say it, you kind of have to listen at some point. So I rewrote that whole book with a completely different antagonist group that I think I look back now and I'm like, thank goodness I did not put that original version out. Like, it's so much better. But it's because of that editor that just really pushed back and said, there's got to be, don't write the whole, like, we love the environment, but there's got to be another issue that teens care about than terrorist cells, hiding in the mountains.
From the Kenny Rogers song, you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them.
Right.
Because in my scientific career, that you have to listen to people, but sometimes you have to go with your own. You have to persevere, you have to persist.
Yeah.
And ignore all the naysayers.
Right.
And it's just a matter of knowing when to climb the hill and when to say, oh, no.
Yeah.
Thanks,
and
but
to be
no, thanks.
open.
I'm gonna die on that one.
Yeah. You have to trust the process, I guess, is part of it.
Yeah. And most of the time. And,
yeah.
And know when not to trust it.
Right.
Shelli, any other wonderful pieces of advice? It's very rare that I have an interview with somebody and then I go and behave differently as a result. And this happened following our conversation. One or two ideas for aspiring and perspiring authors that you'd like to share?
I think in this market, you have to find a way to stand out, whether that's with your voice, whether that's with your idea. And so if you find an idea, like, how can you make it the most different of anything that's out there? And I think that is kind of what the hard part is right now is, every story's been done, but how do you tell a story and how is it different? My unicorn book, I asked my editor, like, why did you pick up another unicorn book, right? Like, unicorn books are everywhere. And she said it was you, but this is your perspective on a unicorn book that is different from all the other ones out there.
It was a unique corn.
It was a unique corn. And it was funny and it was humorous and it was a little bit different, a little bit quirky. And so I think that I try to take that into all my books. Like, how do I make this book different from anything that's out there? And that's why I say, think about the market, because I wanted to write a unicorn book but I didn't want to write one that had already been written. So I wanted to write my own, a different one. In order to write my own, I needed to know what was out there.
But
So I read
sometimes
every
people will,
unicorn book in the world.
yeah, but sometimes people will say, there's so many unicorn books. Write a GNU book.
Right. Yeah. Write something
But
different.
you stuck to your guns and you succeeded. So if you sometimes they say, okay, there aren't enough biographies of gastroenterologists, right? And then you go and
True.
spend 2 years and you spill your guts. Hey, I don't know
That's
what's happening.
hilarious.
Terrible. And nobody wants a book on gastroenterologists. On the other hand, as you've proven, a good book on unicorns that's different is going to sell, even though there's a million, and everybody's telling you, oh, don't write a unicorn book.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to kind of think of it in the She Persisted is, if you're going to do, nonfiction and you're writing for kids, what is going to interest a kid? I mean, kids love to talk about poop. So I don't know why. There's got to be a way to do a gastro book that is interesting to kids that talks about poop. There just has to be. There has to be someone out there that's interesting to kids. It's just the way you write it. If it's just a boring one and someone's, I don't know, there has to be something interesting about it. So I would look for a gastroenterologist, someone who is a little bit more open about how they speak, or someone who brought, I don't know.
Somebody, the guy who invented constipation.
Something. There has to be something there because poop is funny.
Yeah. I was being facetious. You see, we came up with another idea and we've gone and shared it with the whole world again. Darn it.
So I would look for a gastroenterologist, and I would look for a doctor who is completely different and has kind of something quirky about them that kids will gravitate to. For Florence Nightingale, she collected rocks and sorted them by size and by shape, and was very big into statistics. And that kind of led to her later figuring out how to do the Rose diagram and figure out the statistics of who was dying, why they were dying, and realizing that most people were not dying of their wounds. They were dying of, cholera or dysentery.
And being able to use the science and math to tell the story.
Right.
And that's incredible.
So you need to find that's interesting like that.
These Rose charts, they tell a story.
Yep.
So
and no one could understand those stories. And so visually, that was why she came up with the Rose diagram. So she could visually show people, no, look, this is what's going on, because numbers in a list weren't grabbing people. So she had to think of a different way to communicate what was important.
We rest our case.
Yes.
Shelli, we're running out of time. What do you have in the pipeline so that I'll be able to interview you again next year?
Yeah, so in 2024, I am working on a chapter book series with Kim Derting, who also did the Love Science, and it is Farm Friends. So it kind of talks about the science of farms, farm to table. It's about a girl who lives on a sustainable farm and just some of the fun things that she gets to do on the farm. That really is part of our society, making soap, growing things. And so that comes out in 2024. And right now we have 6 books in that series.
Wow.
Yeah. We're excited about it.
And you've sold them all.
Yes, those 6 are definitely coming out. They're coming out with capstone. It's adorable. The illustrator has adorable illustrations. So it's just kind of a different take on STEM, looking at the agricultural side, which I think we take for granted with our food. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it's received. But it still falls within my STEM and kind of, girls learning different things and getting dirty on a farm and appreciating, where our food comes from.
But still, do you have a special love for your fiction?
I mean, that is fiction. Or do you mean my thrillers?
No, yeah, your thrillers, your thesaurus books, the ones that aren't hardcore science.
Yeah, so they sound like they're hardcore science, but they're a little bit more like the Love Science series. Like they have some stuff in them, but it's really about a girl who lives on a farm and just some of the challenges that farms have. But yes, I mean, I love fiction. I love thrillers. I love adventures. I mean, that's really, Harry Potter is my favorite series of all time. I'm reading it now for the third time. And so I would love to get back to novels. That's kind of my pie in the sky dream moving forward is to.
There ain't nothing stopping you, dear.
Nope. So I'm
And-
working on
and-
middle grade. So hopefully I'll move
There
up.
is nothing stopping this remarkable lady. So,
Aw.
Shelli Johannes, our second interview was better than the first even.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was
Thank you.
great having you. And I will just say that I am Mel Rosenberg for the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I have been hosting the wonderful Shelli Johannes, talking about her new book, She Persisted, Florence Nightingale, but also talking about a lot of things related to literature and life. And Shelli, if you come back on, we'll say goodbye to everybody, come back on, and I will tell you a secret.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for having me again. This is one of my favorite interviewers and podcasts. So
Thank you, dear. So bye-bye, everybody, and come back, Shelli, and we'll share a little secret.